Kathy, if you'd like to start the meeting, I think I'm ready.
Oh, I think you're muted.
Thank you. I'm finding my place in the packet. It's 6:51. I will call the Business and Finance Committee meeting to order. We're late, and it's my fault, and I apologize. And we're going to do the fourth quarter review, and so I will pass it off to fourth quarter financial report. I'll pass it off to Director Emanuelson, please.
Sure. Thank you very much. I will start with just a couple brief comments and really just open it up to questions. To me, I've gone through this material extensively. I'm working on our formal financial statements for the auditors, and they'll be here in a couple of weeks. So I hope it's a very complete document as far as revenues and expenditures go. I think we've got all the accounting entries processed. So the 10,000 foot view of the budget is we had a $151,000 deficit. The good news is we were budgeting for 423,000. And that 423,000 comes from the surplus general fund reserves that we were transferring to debt service, as well as to the capital projects fund as part of the 2021 budget. So putting those numbers side to side, we actually didn't do too bad at all this year. It was a $272,000 favorable variance, even though we are still in the red. We did not need to use all those funds from reserves to support those other activities. Page 2 of the report, I started putting a little table together, I think about a year and a half ago, on the top of my quarterly reports. It's just kind of a summary of revenues and expenditures, again, high level. What were the significant contributors to budget variances? So while revenues were down $109,000, expenditures were down $252,000. We had a number of staff transition issues in 2021, which left a number of vacancies. We also eliminated staff positions with Diane Hall's departure.
I'm sorry. Is anybody else getting feedback?
You're getting feedback from me?
I just hear some background noise. So is everybody on mute?
Let me turn my mic around. Is it now? Good? Bad?
It's good, but maybe it was just me.
All right. Well, let me know if that comes up again. I can certainly move my microphone to a different location.
Seems good. Thank you.
Great. So we saved a significant amount of funds in staff costs this year, which I would say are the biggest components of our reduction of expenditures. I'd also like to just make note that with the revenue shortfalls, you'll see $100,000 in the second to last line item on the revenue side of that table called mark to market. And that is not cash. That is an accounting entry that we're required to make that just says, well, if we had to liquidate all of our holdings, what would that do to us compared to the start of this year to the end of this year? Now we buy and hold our investments, so that's really not a probable outcome, but we do have to report that, and that also contributed to what would have otherwise been an even more favorable budget year for us. Again, most notably, we saved quite a bit in staff costs due to a number of transition issues. So with that said,
so is that 100,000 that you put for mark to market? Is that obviously that changes every year, and do you put that in the budget?
No, we don't assume any mark-to-market changes. They're simply accounting error entries. Again, that's not real cash. It's just a valuation adjustment. So we assume it's going to be neutral. Some years it's a positive numbers. Other years it's a negative number. It really just looks from from the start of the year to the end of the year. What did the value of our investments change if we had to sell them all at the end of the year?
So it's pretty reliant on interest rates, obviously, and volatility in the interest market.
That's a very large component of that, and the duration of the holdings we have influences that as well. So yeah, there's a number of issues going there.
Does this seem exceptionally? I mean, it seems to me anytime I see a figure, something's off. Have we seen this kind of thing before in your experience in Shorewood?
Yeah, we've seen some pretty significant negatives. We've seen some pretty significant positives. Again, I think it's as you stated, predominantly, when are we buying our holdings? What's the interest rates that they're going to pay at the time? And then what are interest rates doing in the meantime? Are they going up? Are they going down? But at some point in time, because we hold to maturity, that number zeroes out over the long haul, because we always get what we bought at the end of the day.
Thank you.
So with that, those are the broad strokes. I'm happy to review anything you might see in the departmental levels or other details that you see, or answer any questions in my general comments in pages 2 and 3.
I did have a question about the police, the grants. Are these the ones from the state?
Yes, the police department has an opportunity to participate in several state or federal grant programs. Again, we don't necessarily know what those are going to be when we're doing a budget previous year, so we don't budget for them. But you'll also notice, if you're on the police department budget, there is a line item called Special Enforcement Overtime. So to the best that we can pair up the additional man hours being provided for under those grant programs, the police department tries to code those hours to special enforcement overtime to kind of reflect the correlation between those two. Now, obviously, command staff can't do that just by the nature of their salaries, but for the line officers, that's what they do. So it's always nice to have some extra funding coming in for targeted activities.
Trustee Warren?
I noticed, and maybe this is just such a kind of small variance, it doesn't matter, but I figured I'd ask, since the interest rate environment appears to be turning around a little bit, with the Fed looking poised to raise interest rates. Is that something that will positively impact our interest income going forward? I know it keeps going, for obvious reasons, that interest income keeps going down as the rates keep getting lower, but if there's a turnaround in that, is that kind of a quick rebound, or is it very much like it's very, very incremental until those interest rates, go back up or go back down or whatever they're going to do?
Well, it's somewhat incremental for the reasons that we've laddered our investment holdings to 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year maturities. So we can only reinvest at prospective higher interest rates as those maturities come due. The more likely impact as you see those interest rates go up a little bit, at least in the short term, the value of what we're holding compared to the start of this year will tend to be adjusted down with that accounting entry at the end of 2022, because again, we're holding at a set rate against a set market environment, and as interest rates go up in the market, until our holdings kind of catch up with that, we'll have those series of adjustments. Those are somewhat offset by, again, the fact we do have a variety of items maturing. So as those get near their maturity date, the value of those investments goes up faster than the value of our longer term holdings get marked down. So I'm waiting for that day, though. I can already tell that the 2022 budget will be a challenge to meet those target numbers, and I try to be pretty conservative, but those interest rates just will not budge.
I have a question that if I could go then to page 16, I just wanted to go over again, if you were done, Trustee Warren.
No, I'm done. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, my question was on page 16, the enforcement grants there, I see them. So we're doing, it looks to be about 2/3 of what we used to do. And so why is that? Are we not utilizing them as much? Or in the context of your report about the item about enforcement grants, can you tell me about, 2019 was 27,000, 2020 actually was 16, and year to date was 18, so it's up a little bit.
Well, I'll let Tom step in if he feels the need, but my understanding is that the amount of grants that are available to us that we can participate in will vary from year to year. So it really just matters of what's available, of what we can participate in, and how much time we can commit to those activities and still carry on the day-to-day operations of the department. So
it was not an operational decision or a policy decision made at any level in the village?
not to my knowledge.
That's maybe my question.
Yeah, not to my
And
knowledge.
that's just something I would, going forward, because I know that's sort of like the last piece, I believe, of this is the same committee that's on public safety. Sort of one of the last pieces we're going to be looking at is traffic enforcement, I believe. Not to take your spot, Trustee Warren.
No, no, not at all.
Tom, do you have anything to add to my summary of the grants?
No, we did bring the grants previously to public safety and brought those through, and it was approved to continue doing those because they are safety related with speed enforcement, OWI enforcement, and seatbelt related activities. The amounts do vary depending on what gets awarded to the North Shore, and then from there it gets divided amongst the 7 agencies. In terms of whatever our pool of the money is once it gets awarded, we don't force officers to go out and do it on overtime. We don't assign people to go and do it. The officers will volunteer to do it, and so if we utilize all the funds, we utilize all the funds. If we don't, we don't. Just depending on the availability of the officers and their willingness to engage in the special enforcement activities right now.
So did we use all the grant money that we got, I guess is my.
I don't have the numbers in front of me. Maybe Mark could.
Is that indicated someplace here? If you could just direct me to a page.
Well, again, the financial reports only reflect what we've participated in. We do not track total available funds in the North Shore area. I don't have that information.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions right now? I think it was a pretty, there was a lot of variances, but I think we all know that there's underlying factors for that. And by far, the vast majority of our budget line items came in pretty close to what we had projected. I think we all understand right now that, when budgeting, we use a 3-year average kind of estimate because there's just inherently some natural fluctuations in budgeting for operational activities. But I always like to see a favorable variance at the end of the day, assuming that it's not for adverse reasons.
And so given that we've come through COVID, and we've we're seeing the end of some major staff changes, but I guess I'm more focused on the COVID question. And I know this is not because the federal funds are not part of our annual budget. So, but I guess I'm just wondering, going forward, we shouldn't, what would you see the role of COVID being in our budget? I'm a lay person and I would say it's minimal, but you know, the federal funding spigot has sort of stopped, right?
Well, right, I think we had some significant costs on the onset, which were covered under various grant programs. I think by and large, those costs have diminished. And I would tend to agree with your assessment that I think the budgetary impact of operations is really going to be limited to the availability of staff should they get sick. But that won't be a fiscal number. It'll be more of a operational ability to complete all the tasks that we would normally do on a week-to-week basis. So hopefully I agree with you. We're over that most significant phase of the COVID environment and look forward to better days.
Thank you. I did have a question then about the Whitefish Bay transfer station costs. I think you alluded to it in your memo at the beginning, and I was sorry.
I can summarize because again, what we do is we look at a 3-year average of tonnages that Whitefish Bay brings to the village, for which we contract with Waste Management to dispose of. And when they bring more in, we pay more in those line items for waste disposal, but we also bill back those amounts to Whitefish Bay. So if those amounts are over or under on the expenditure side, they should correlate to being over or under the estimates for the revenue that we programmed into the budget. They're programmed to match. So there's a net zero impact in that to the budget. If our revenues are up, our expenditures are up by a similar amount, and vice versa.
Okay, thank you. And then I just noticed in water and sewer utilities, $69,000 of unanticipated debt issuance costs.
Yes.
That it would assume the 4480 North Lake Drive bond issue was sewer, not water.
That would be correct. When I put the note for unanticipated, I guess what would have been a better choice of words is unbudgeted. So I did not budget for those costs. I don't know which fund I see, and let me just take a peek.
Is there a specific issue or project that the unanticipated budget, the debt issuance of about 70,000 was?
Give me one moment. Yeah, that was in the water utility, yes. And again, we just did not budget for debt issue costs in the water utility. My recollection at the moment is a wee bit hazy as to why I didn't include that in the budget, but for lack of a better reason, we'll call that a lesson learned on forecasting to make sure that those items are reflected as we anticipate to borrow funds in the future.
So the water. So again, the 4480 was not a water bond issue, or it was a GO. Was that a general?
4480 was a sewer bond.
Sewer bond. Okay.
Those are not the unanticipated debt issuance costs that are reflected. It wasn't a water utility.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And I guess something else, I just, I look at the numbers and on, I'm gonna slide over here. I'm sorry, a bigger screen. Page 4, I just noticed general fund summary charges for services was at 146%, which seemed high. And I couldn't connect that with any of the dots that you put in front of me in your memo.
Yeah, it's most likely going to be the increased revenue from on-street parking. I think that'll be detailed.
Right, I keep forgetting that's not in the parking utility. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we have the continued demise of cable TV to deal with
We do.
budgetarily. Who's all streaming? Who's still a dinosaur and doing cable? No, in the interest of full disclosure. I'm sorry, does anyone else have a question for Director Emanuelson?
I'm good.
Trustee Arndorfer?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. All right. I believe we've had our questions answered, and thank you, Mark, for your work.
Well, thank you so much for having me this evening, and we'll connect soon.
Yes, long-range financial plan is just around the corner.
I know. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, and so is there a motion to adjourn at 7:13? Or any further discussion, anyone?
I'll move to adjourn.
Trustee Warren moves to adjourn,
Second,
seconded by Trustee Arndorfer. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes.
all right.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Would like to share with us. And then I will give the village trustees a chance to just share a high-level response as to whether, if it seems appropriate at the time. We won't take any public comments or questions this evening, and so any follow-up questions or comments should be directed via email to Director Griepentrag or Manager Ewald. So, and that goes for trustees as well, just because we really are just hearing what Mr. Dominion has to say tonight, and if he has a direct question of the board. So with that, I will hand it over to Mr. Dominion, and I mean, not Mr. Dominion, Mr. Adams of Dominion Properties, and welcome this evening.
Thank you very much. And thank you for everyone on the board for the time here tonight. I have a short presentation. Can I share your screen? Yeah, can I share? How do I share the screen?
Down at the bottom on Zoom, there should be a share screen
Okay.
button in green.
Yeah, okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, this is I've got Emily Garafello, one of our project managers here to help me with the tech, because this is the first time I've done like a PowerPoint in a presentation like this. But so I just wanted to give you a short background on Dominion Properties so that you know who we are, and then what we're doing with the Shorewood property that we own, and some ideas for the future.
Yeah, make the full screen. Just do from beginning.
Okay, so Dominion Properties is about 22 years old. It was founded by myself and Michael O'Connor. We were Marquette roommates, and we have about 400 units, 100,000 square feet of commercial retail space, and 12 employees. We're located on the east side of Milwaukee. I live, very close to Shorewood on the east side. We've owned properties in Shorewood for a number of years, on and off. We are really into historic preservation and sustainable building development. We like to invest and manage with the goal of the basically community. We are long-term holders of our properties. We do not just rehab and flip. So we're investors in our community, and we're really into sustainability. We're always looking for energy efficient upgrades and like state-of-the-art type of things in our properties to make them more energy efficient and more welcoming to the people that use them. Just by way of example or demonstration, these are two projects that we completed. These are residential projects in Milwaukee. One of them is over by East Point's Pick and Save on Jackson Street, and the other one is just north of Brady Street on Prospect. These are LEED Platinum multifamily projects. These were done without any assistance at all from the city of Milwaukee. These were demonstration projects to show others in the community that you can successfully build a LEED Platinum multifamily if you're into that type of thing. And so these are buildings that we've built and have owned for a number of years. We're really proud of them. They achieved LEED Platinum certification very, very easily. We have a lot of points towards the LEED Platinum certification. Our current project that we're working on right now is a 80-room boutique hotel in downtown Racine. We've worked very closely with the mayor and the city staff and council to get this project under construction. It's about 80,000 square feet. It was a vacant department store on Monument Square, which is their main square in downtown Racine. It had sat vacant for 40 years. It was the Zahn's department store. And we started working at it about 3.5 or 4 years ago. We kind of had it ready to go, all designed and ready for construction, and the pandemic hit. And we all know what happened with the hotel industry. So it took about a 2.5-year break because we couldn't find financing on it. I'm really, really happy to say that this project is just under construction. We closed on financing in December, and it has no primary bank financing. So we were very creative in how this project got underway. So it's under construction, and it will be open the spring, early summer of 2023. And we're shooting for a LEED certification of gold. So that's a bit of a background very quickly on Dominion. This is a survey getting into the actual site in Shorewood. So right now on the screen, we've got Oakland Avenue on the left and Capitol Drive up on top. The buildings that we purchased are the 7-story building at 3970 North Oakland. That's the old North Shore Bank building. And before that, I think it was like the Badger Federal building, built in 1974, along with a very large parking lot. There is a 4-story apartment building just to the east of it. That is not ours. That's owned by another landlord. But we did purchase the 2-story masonry building at 1901 East Capitol Drive. That's the old Ascension doctor's office with the parking on the ground floor and the doctor's office above. In fact, my doctor was in it for many, many years before they moved over to the Sendix building. The entire 2 parcels, we're kind of rebranding in what we've kind of decided on for a name is the Shorewood Hub. It is, in my opinion, the center, at the center of Shorewood geographically. It's a crossroads. And so we worked with Pat Algiers on marketing for the project, getting in contact with local groups like the art community and others, and came up with a name that I think is fitting for the project. So that basically, it's kind of C-shaped, if you will. So phase one is currently under construction. We purchased the 7-story building in September of last year. We took a look at the property and we're looking at it from the standpoint of possibly a reuse of the existing office building. And a couple things that we found is that a lot of the tenants that are in it actually really wanted to stay in Shorewood and in that building in particular. The old bank space is vacant right now, but the building is 80% occupied. Everybody I talked to was like, really? It's, because the bank space is currently vacant, people just assume that the building is empty, but it's not. In fact, the Orthopedic Hospital of Wisconsin is expanding into the old bank space. So we are right now working on renovating the building. It was built in 1974 and it really has not had any upgrades. So we're spending a considerable amount of money on HVAC upgrades, bathrooms, hallways, exterior work. And right now we're kind of in the thick of it. We're about halfway finished with the project. I've got some exterior photos here to share. As you guys may have noticed, the big white sculpture is gone in the front. We are currently working on uplighting the building in the front and new landscaping on the site. The photos on the bottom part are actually the rear of the building. The rear did not have, if you see my cursor here, the rear did not have the big storefront windows that the front did. So this is the east side we're looking at now. So we just opened up the walls on this side and put the storefront windows in because it will really allow the orthopedic hospital to have a lot more light in the building. And really, 95% of the people that come and go come through the east door versus the west because the parking's on that side. So we're really trying to make that the front door. At the same time, over here, the picture on the right, we're removing the drive-through canopy and going to just be continuing on with this fascia, a nice flush. So we're really giving it a full new look. Of course, updating the pavement, sidewalks, and landscaping as well. That will be the third part of the project in phase one. So Shorewood Hub is phase one is about halfway complete. We're looking at summertime, maybe fall at the latest, to have this phase complete. Phase two, this is now getting into the area that we're looking for input from the village residents and board members. This will include the current property that is 1901 East Capitol, and then some portion of the parking lot that is currently part of the office building's property. Whether or not phase two is bound where it is in phase one, whether it moves to the east or west a little bit, we're not quite sure. But what we do know is that we're looking at a building that is L-shaped. So taking down the 1901 East Capitol Drive building and then building a new structure on that blue area of phase two. here's some pictures. I think the one in the top left kind of shows it all. That parking lot is never used in that area. It is not needed for the office tower. It was designed back in the 70s when the code said that, you needed a lot of parking for office. And I think we all know that requirement is no longer valid. This is land that would be very, very much better utilized, redeveloped. So here's some pictures of the 1901 building on the right there, the back of it on the top and the front on the lower. And then the remaining parking lot, you can see the 3970 North Oakland building there on the right side of that lower picture. So that's our development site that we're looking at. Now, what do we do with it? We've identified some uses that we feel would be very beneficial to the village, and we're definitely seeking input, but there's also some potential uses. So what we're looking at right now is a residential development with roughly 100 apartments, of which 80 of them would be market rate, and roughly 20% or 20 units would be affordable units for folks with intellectual or developmental disabilities. So we're looking to partner possibly with Able Light, which was formerly Bethesda, in their Cornerstone Village type of development that would be co-developer with us. And Christine from Able Light is here. And there's a couple slides here after this one where she can kind of introduce herself and what Able Light's all about. But we feel very strongly that the project should have an affordable housing component to it. Also, because Dominion Properties is involved, there's definitely going to be a strong sustainability LEED certification type of element to it, because every project that we do, especially new construction, is LEED certified. That's just who we are. The potential uses, I know that there's a very strong demand in Shorewood for daycare. Talking with some of the folks that have that age children, there's a huge waiting list for daycare. We've been approached by a large national daycare firm. They're very interested in the space. So the apartments would be on floors 2 through 5 or however tall the building is. But the ground floor is really what we're trying to focus in on. How do we program that? We definitely want to have multiple income streams from a standpoint of having the building have a lot of diversity as far as uses go. So daycare is right up there. Community or youth center, we've been meeting with some youth center operators in Fox Point and also Cedarburg, just as recently as Friday, to see kind of how those centers work. We feel that a food and beverage outlet would be a great asset to this particular project. We've been approached by a couple banks that we work with that are very interested in the site. And then we're seeking input from folks like yourselves to see if there's other uses that we haven't really identified yet. So again, this is just a way for us to introduce ourselves. We own these properties and we plan on owning these properties for a long time. We've been doing this for 22 years and I'm hoping to do it for another 22 or more. That's the introduction. I'd like to quickly turn it over to Christine from Ablelight, just to give you a introduction on that side of the development. How do I get out of the screen share?
Well, her slides are in it, so you need to stay in it.
Oh, that's right. Oh, Christine, are you there?
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks, Christopher. Hi, my name's Christine Journalista, and I'll keep it brief, and then I can hopefully answer questions or elaborate through a question period. So I'm with Ablelight, and we're a nonprofit that's been in existence since the early 1900s, and we, ever since those early days, have been supporting people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We recently changed our name from Bethesda Lutheran Communities to Ablelight. So for those of you who are like, who's Ablelight? We're just Bethesda with a new name. So we're committed to Wisconsin and committed to supporting people with disabilities. Christopher, you can advance to the next slide. So we have recently ventured into real estate development, which is why we're part of the conversation today, because we saw a need for inclusive housing that's community integrated for people with disabilities. And this image really encapsulates our approach to housing development. Um, we want to be inclusive, as I mentioned, so 20 or 25% of our units are set aside for people with developmental disability. We focus on building community, so we go beyond building, the bricks and mortar, and have activities, programming, great event spaces for people to get to know one another and build natural supports. We focus on designing for independence through safety and security measures, smart home technology, universal design. We support individual choice, so anybody can bring whoever their existing service provider is to work with them in our building. Ablelight doesn't necessarily need to be a provider here. It's really creating a separation between us as providing a great place to live and great supports. And then the next two pillars for our approach are really intertwined, is in that we really want to be able to respond to local needs and be innovative and creative when we're doing that. So it's part of our exploration that Christopher was talking about. We've had some preliminary conversations with representatives from Shorewood moving forward, obviously from parent advocates for people with disabilities about what they would like to see. We have some tours set up of this of Sherwood High School on this coming Friday to see how their transition age programs are set up. So we're just right now in that exploratory phase about how best the Dominion Able Light development could take shape at this important intersection. You want to move to the next one, Chris? So I won't go into great detail about this. There's lots of information available online. I would be happy to do more information about what we do in another setting. But this development that we're pursuing in Wauwatosa is very, very similar in a lot of ways to what we're starting to think about doing in Shorewood. It's at a high-profile location in Wauwatosa. It's mixed use, mixed income. It's approximately 100 units, 20% were set aside, having set aside for households where at least one person has a developmental disability. And on the ground floor, we have a cafe. We're working with a local coffee shop, donut shop to be located on the corner, as well as to provide employment options for people with disabilities. And then we're starting to work through a program with the local school district, Tosa School District and Elmbrook, about expanding their transition age program on the ground floor as well. And then this is a location for a bank, and they're returning to this location. So just wanted to give you a little thumbnail of what we're working on there, because it shows kind of the types of partnerships that we're interested in pursuing in our projects. So that's it, us in a nutshell, a thumbnail. Thanks for your time.
Yes, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Well, I guess, Mr. Adams, as I said, I'd like to go around and ask the trustees if they'd like to offer any high-level feedback or some questions, but as I said, we're not agendaed for any type of discussion or even giving you directions, so I really want to be respectful of the scope that we have within this meeting. Is there something in particular you'd like to know from the trustees at this time? Because we kind of have like one lightning round of input from the trustees, and then we'll move on to our business meeting.
No, this was perfect. This was just an introduction to who we are and what we're thinking. We are, our phone is always open. We would love to hear from folks. We're like Christine said, we're in the beginning stages of this. And I think that, this property is, because of where it is, we have a unique possibility here, and I want to get it right. I want to do what the village needs the most, if we can. And so thank you again for your time. But yes, I would be more than happy to talk with anybody who has questions or whatnot at any point.
And I would also say, I don't think there's anything that precludes you from, having a community meeting, inviting the community on site, and you can host your own input session as well. You're a property owner, and you can do that outside of the village if you need more input from the community. Trustee Ursink.
Thank you, President McKay. I just want to say thank you for this presentation. It was very refreshing to see developers come in and make a very thoughtful sort of pitch and presentation to what their plans are for the future in our community, and wanted to thank you for that. Also wanted to thank you for your thoughtfulness as far as affordable housing and what those kind of things, what that could look like, and starting to reach out to some different partners. Really appreciate that. Just thought that this was really refreshing and appreciated this proposal. So thank you.
Thanks.
I think I'm just going to go around and call on the trustees for the sake of time. I'm going kind of counterclockwise on my screen. Trustee Warren.
Sorry, I have a puppy being awful in the background. That's why I keep turning around. No, thank you for the presentation. I only have a short time left here on the board, but I do appreciate the partnership and trying to and outlining your vision for the site and what you're prioritizing, how you're prioritizing it. Also really appreciate kind of hearing that you're working with the community. You've been in contact with members of the community, key groups within the community. That's a great thing. So I thank you for the presentation. I know we're not agenda-sized for it, so I'm trying to stay within my lane. I don't have any questions at this point.
Thank you. Trustee Baldock.
I don't really have anything new to, add. I'll just echo what Arthur and Wes said, that, we really appreciate that you took the time to come in and share with us, and that you're really taking, I think, the, holistic approach to this, and have heard what folks in Shorewood want to see. So, thank you again for the time.
Trustee Eindhofer.
Yeah, just echo my fellow trustees. Very interesting presentation. Appreciate you taking the time. I definitely heard demand for the kind of housing you're putting forth while campaigning, just to, around this time last year, actually. So I think there's clearly a demand and clearly a need. So appreciate the work here. Thank you.
Trustee Bosworth.
Just like Trustee Warren, I only have limited time left on this board. I'm very excited about any economic development and redevelopment opportunities in the village. And we have a housing crisis, and there are more people that want to live in Shorewood than there are available units. So I hope we see more opportunities like this in the future. So thank you for your time.
Trustee Stokbrand.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, did I get everyone? I think I did. Yeah, I think what you and I had a brief phone call or Zoom, several months ago, just to introduce myself, since everything's new since the first time you met with the village when you acquired the properties. And yeah, everything you're talking about matches the priorities that I've heard from the public, from public input, studies that we've had done. So I think you're within the fences on that, and you're talking to the right folks, and there are probably more. And I would encourage you, if you're looking for community input, to host, a forum at your own. The village can't host that type of thing unless it advances to a place where we are a partner. And so that, of course, I think staff has gone over with you around what the zoning review looks like and what an application for TIP assistance looks like. And I would be, I welcome news of either one of those things as you develop. So, but having some community uses on the first floor is something that the community has asked for, and we've never quite gotten there. So would love to see a development with that in the near future. And I agree with you, this is a very, very important set of parcels in our community. So excited that you are up for the vision and the challenge and the creativity.
Great, thank you. This has been very helpful in kind of validating that we're on the right track, if you will. And the next steps for us will be, we've just engaged an architect. And so we'll come up with some rough, massing and design for the site, and then seek more input, like in a public forum type of way. In the meantime, we'll continue to reach out to folks in the community if they have any questions or comments.
That's great.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good night. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to item 5, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda this evening?
So moved. Second.
All right. Motion by Trustee Warren, seconded by Trustee Bockhorst. Any discussion? All right, seeing none. All those in favor of the consent agenda as presented, show of hands or say aye.
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 All right, any opposed? No, okay, consent agenda is adopted. Is passed as presented, 7-0. Moving on, that was about 2 pages worth of agenda there. Moving on to item 6, there are no items removed from the consent agenda. Item 7, public hearings, there are none this evening. Item 8, citizens to be heard. This item is for matters not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the meeting that would like to be heard this evening? All right, I think we just have friends and family here. Okay. Moving on to item 9, new business. Consider 9A, consider professional services agreement for downspout disconnection program, zone 2 site evaluation. This is meeting number 6. And this will be Director Bushlick.
Good evening. Your agenda is itemized for approval of a task order with Strand to begin the next step of this program. But I just wanted to take this opportunity, maybe 2 minutes, just to update you on our progress with the implementation of the downspout disconnection program. You'll recall that the plan that the board approved last year divides the combined sewer service area into 3 zones. We did site assessments of each property last year in the zone 1 area. Those letters I expect to issue those notices to the residents in that area. Those letters should go out in the early part of April. The memo includes just a few highlights, which I personally found rather interesting. There are 665 properties in the Zone 1 area. Total number of downspouts on the structures in that area are 2,566. We found that 1,254 of those had already been disconnected, which I thought was outstanding. So I think the board and the village can see the results of some of the work that we've done over the last 10 to 15 years to encourage that. And so there are just over 1,000 of the remaining downspouts that are exempt from the requirement because there's not sufficient drainage area to disconnect them. So that leaves a total of 230 downspouts that will require disconnection based on the village's ordinance, which mirrors the MMSD requirements. And there's a total of 148 properties. So obviously some properties have more than one downspout that will have to disconnect and work with property owners to do that. But your agenda tonight includes consideration of a task order with Strand to allow us to begin work in Zone 2. So that task order covers the property assessments on each property in Zone 2, and then also the development of all the associated reports. They provide a very detailed report of the assessment, including color photos, that make it very easy for affected property owners to know exactly which downspout is in question, and that we're talking about with both, as I said, color photos and then written descriptions. And with that, I'll pause.
Trustee Ursink,
I'd like to make a motion.
you got it.
I recommend approval of professional services agreement with Strand Associates in the amount of $15,200 for the combined sewer service area downspout disconnection program Zone 2 site evaluations.
Second.
All right, motion by trustee Ursink, seconded by trustee Baldoff. Any discussion? Trustee Stokbrand.
Thank you. Is this the company we used for the Zone 1?
Yes, this is done under the village's umbrella municipal engineering contract.
Okay, and so is there a reason we didn't go out for bids?
If you recall, last year we had some discussion when this program was initially designed. The thought was that it would be implemented by the construction manager position that had been included in the budget a couple of budgets ago. At the time that we needed to begin this work, we were not able to bring anyone on board. That position has since been eliminated from the budget. I will say that my recommendation would be to continue with Strand because we're into the program. They have a good understanding of what we need to do. And so the thought process was that we would continue under that larger contract.
So I'm sorry, because they're our village engineer, right?
Correct.
So we didn't go out for bids because we already have a village engineering company.
We didn't go out for bids because we are already into the implementation of the project.
So you don't see, like when you want to do Zone 3, then next year you don't see going out for bids either.
It would not be my recommendation.
As a fiduciary, I guess that seems like something we should be doing.
So noted. Any other questions?
Just a quick follow-up.
Trustee Warren?
Yeah, just, and Rebecca, maybe this is more for you, for these kind of, single bidder contracts. Isn't there generally, I mean, isn't the village policy, doesn't it build in a dollar threshold? Isn't it like 30 from what I remember?
So services, you are correct. We have a financial or a purchasing policy. I believe the threshold would be services over and above 10,000 cumulative. We hired Strand to do a number of projects on an annual basis above that already. And my recollection, and I apologize if my memory is a little fuzzy, but we did discuss this at the time that the construction manager position was not solidified and we could not identify a recruit for that. And at the time we had identified that this was work that was going to be coordinated with the village engineer, given that gap. So it's something that we previously reviewed.
Okay, that helps jog my memory a little bit. It's a little bit hazy. It goes back a little bit, but.
Any other questions or a motion?
We already have a motion on the table.
Oh, we do? Go ahead. Thank you. See no other discussion. Let's do a roll call vote on this. Trustee Backhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Ursink.
Yes.
Trustee Moore Baldoff.
Yes.
Trustee Stokebrand.
No.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Orndorfer.
Aye.
President McCaig. Aye. Motion passes 6-1. Thank you. Moving on to 9B, consider award of contract for Hubbard Park Canoe and Kayak Launch, meeting number 6. Director Bushwick.
Thank you. Please recall that this project was initially scheduled for 2021 construction. The village at that point had only received one construction bid, and the board determined that it would be in the village's best interest to reject that bid and delay the project by a year, rebid that project. We did that earlier this year and received a total of 3 bids, which are summarized in your memo. You'll recall that we structured the project with a base bid, which was for actual excavation and construction of the launch with some stone stairs and risers. And then there were also 2 bid alternates included. And that was done primarily so that the board would have some flexibility with the budget. The first bid alternate includes a stone bench and some flagstone stone pavers that would extend from the risers of the actual launch back into the lawn area and kind of gradually dissipate as they move toward the circle. The second bid alternate adds additional stone risers of different heights to the what would be the south side of the launch, and those items are pictured in an attachment to the memo, if as I think provides a little more clarity probably than my description. So what we're asking you to do tonight is to consider whether you would like to award this project. If so, the base bid is a requirement, obviously, and then you have the discretion to award any or all of the alternates. So you could choose to award the base bid only, base bid and alternate 1, or base bid and alternate 2, or base bid and alternates 1 and 2. So lots of decisions, but I'm happy to answer questions related to the bid structure or any other part of the project, should you have any.
Leanne, I think I know the answer, but in the memo it says that you reached out to community groups, but then it doesn't identify which ones. I'm imagining it was the Parks Commission or Open Spaces Commission.
That was done previously. I know that there have been discussions. You'll recall that this was a project that was of particular interest to former trustee Maher. So I know he had multiple conversations with different groups. I believe River Keepers, I think the Milwaukee Greenway group. So there have been a number of conversations about this pending project, but also have been working with Mr. Davis at Hubbard Park Lodge. Parks and Open Space, I believe, is I haven't spoken with them recently, but in the initial project planning, 18 months, 2 years ago, I believe the then Parks Commission was aware of the project.
Thank you for that reminder and clarification. And can you all remind me, Trustee Arndorfer and Trustee Baldoff, were you on the board when we rejected the bid last year? Because it was the fall, right? When we bid it?
That would have been May 17th.
Oh, okay. So it was like your first or second meeting. Okay. Trustee Arndorfer, question or comment or motion?
So many options. I was not on the board. I do remember this matter being discussed at the time. I guess just for matter of context more than anything else, I was just interested in seeing if there were any observations as to why we saw more bids this time around. I mean, what is that? Are there any implications of that for, availability of, vendors for this kind of work? Thank you.
Sure. I think we did. I think it helped. I think there was some awareness that we had the project last year and it wasn't awarded. I think we moved up the timeline for bidding by a couple months, which I think helped. Staff did also reach out to some contractors that we thought might be interested to make sure that they were aware of the project. Typically, our communication of the project includes the required official notice publications in the area trade construction daily reporter. But, obviously last year that wasn't enough. So we kind of took the initiative to just make a few people aware of the fact that the project was out there. So probably a combination of those items.
All right. Thank you.
Trustee Warren, Trustee Ursink, who was first?
I think I'm first in the.
Trustee Warren was first.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Leanne, is this kind of like a la carte? What would happen if we said, we're gonna do it without any alternatives this year, but we might be interested in the future. Could we tack on in the future, or is it really something where you have to make your choice and you have to do it either all at once, like whatever choice you make, you're stuck with regardless of, you can't add on later?
I think you have the options to add later. I think you should probably assume that your costs will increase exponentially if you do it that way.
Okay.
Because it's not, in the scope of the type of projects we normally do, this is not very large. And typically one of your bigger costs is contractor mobilization. So for them to mobilize the necessary equipment and do a part of the job, that's going to be a not insignificant amount of the total. So you'd be paying that cost twice. You'd be paying restoration of the surrounding area twice. So you can do it. It's probably not the most efficient way to go about it.
No, and I'm not trying to tip my hand in any way here, because I'm still thinking it over, but I just wanted to make sure that if we chose to not do any of the alternatives this year, we wouldn't need to say, if we want to do it next year, we wouldn't need to rip up, large portions of it in order to attach them or anything like that.
I mean, I'm certain you could do the flagstone pavers and the bench easily. I'm not as certain that you'd be able to do alternate 2, which is the additional stone risers. I think that would be complicated and very likely incredibly expensive to do it as a phased project.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to see that we got these 3 bids here compared to what we had last time. So this is a nice development. Leanne, can you talk a little bit about ESI and does the village have a track record with this particular company?
We have not done business, to my knowledge, in the last 10 to 15 years with this company. This is sort of their bread and butter, as I understand. They do a lot of this work. You know, I've heard only good things about what they've done and the work that they do. So you know, the engineer recommended the award of the bid to ESI.
That's great. Well, I would be in support of the base bid with alternate 2 would be my vote. So thank you.
Would you like to make a motion? Trustee Sofran?
I can. I'll wait.
Okay.
Should I wait?
Yeah, I'll wait.
I-
Trustee, your things before you.
Would you like me to make a motion and then we can go around, or what would you like to do?
I just wanted to give you the option before we handed over the floor to another trustee, if that's what you were gonna do.
Sure. Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion and we'll see where it goes. How about that? So I move to award of a unit price contract for the 2022 Hubbard Park Canoe and Kayak launch to ESI. Alternate 2 in the amount of 14,000. Well, how do we do this? Base bid and then alternate 2? Do we include both of them?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
so the kayak and launch to ESI, base bid in the amount of $37,000 and no cents, and alternate 2 in the amount of $14,661.10.
Point of order.
Mhm.
Are you intentionally excluding alternate 1 from that, or are you thinking alternate 1? Because I think you need to include alternate 1 if you want to include alternate 1, but are you
I
thinking?
intentionally left it out. I left it out, but if there was enough support for it, I'd be open to friendly amendment, including that as well. Let me just include it. If you guys, can I get a friendly, there's no second, so I will go ahead and add alternate 1 in the amount of $3,135 and no cents. If that's all right with you guys, that we went out of order there a little bit. I can reread them all in order if you'd like.
I'm okay with it, and I will second that.
Okay, so
Fantastic.
motion by trustee Ursink, seconded by trustee Baldoff, and I believe trustee Stokbrand was next in line to speak.
Yeah, I just had a question. I don't remember the one bid we got in last year. Was it in the material?
It's probably linked from the history section.
That's okay. I guess I'm wondering too, trying to remember the point of going with option 2 is is it so you have some steps that have a big enough rise so you can literally use it as a bench? So there's the steps you can use to carry your canoe down, right? In the base bid, you have the steps to carry your canoe down.
Mhm.
But alternate 2 provides, shall we say, alternate seating on the one side of the launch, because it's a big rise and you could sit there, you literally couldn't, you wouldn't want to make those steps carrying your canoe. Is that right?
I would say that the narrower steps on the south side of this are, as I understand it, more for recreational users of the area who aren't necessarily using it as a launch, but just maybe a seating area or access to the water. Those steps are more what you'd be accustomed to as access stairs, where you're correct. The other are longer with a much lower rise that make it easier to, move a canoe or a kayak up and down.
So the canoe launch part is the north side?
Yes.
Okay. And then I noticed that we took out the wood. Wasn't there, last year there were some wood pieces that you could slide your canoe on? And I didn't see that this year.
No, that was the direction of the board at the time during the design concept discussions to not include those.
Okay. I guess my feeling about the bench and I mean, I know it's a smaller part of the project, but if the original budget was 40,000 and we can stay in 40,000, I guess it should be a great amenity just to have it there is nice. If we have the two options for the different steps, one of them literally is a seating area. And I think also benches are something that, in the parks, people like to donate those and put their names on them. Just something to think about. And the other thing is the park is not a big park, like our parks in Shorewood are not very big. And I hesitate to spend the money putting in the stone steppers instead of just leaving more to grass, instead of, like, I see an option here to not pave something. And so I'm a little more inclined to not do that. I do realize though, this is all a smaller part, $3,000 in the scheme of things is not big. But I'm in favor of living within the budget and going with the base amount.
Okay, Trustee Ursink, were you raising your hand again?
Yeah, I think the reason I left off alternative one was I wasn't necessarily in favor of the bench. I don't know how much the bench costs, but I felt that there was significant seating area, and like Trustee Stokebrand said, there's plenty of opportunities for bench donations. We see a lot of donated benches in Estherbrook, and we got those Leopold benches, and I would imagine that we could get some of those donated or made for this particular project. Not sure how much the actual, I didn't look at the materials to see how much the actual bench costs. I see Leon's got her hand raised, so I'm sure she can share her thoughts on this. But I do see that proposed flagstone area is probably a smart idea to, as far as like runoff, and as far as, if we have weather issues, we wouldn't get a lot of that runoff to go down on the stairs, so I think that particular part is probably a little bit more important.
Leanne?
I would actually tend to agree with that statement. The reason I initially raised my hand was just to report that if the board chose not to install the flagstone pavers at this time, I think that's an area we would really have to monitor. If this does get a fair amount of use, it's going to be difficult to maintain that turf, in a condition that I think we'd probably all like to see it. I think some flagstone pavers, the idea there was to, not concrete. It's pervious to an extent, and would also hold up to foot traffic significantly better than just a turf lawn. But we'll see. Nobody I think really knows how much use this area is going to get.
Trustee Ursink?
Would it be possible then to remove, it looks like the bench is $2,500. Is that correct, Leanne? Am I reading that right? Stone bench at 5 foot length?
Yep, I think we could award, and Nathan can correct me if this is inaccurate, but I believe we could award alternate one, and then immediately notify the contractor that we would intend to request a change order to remove the bench.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Would we have to put that in our motion? Would that have to be included in the motion?
I think it certainly wouldn't hurt.
Okay. If somebody could, I'd be open to the other trustees, but I would like to include some sort of language like that into the motion.
Why don't you do it and see if Trustee Baldoff seconds it as well? I think that's the cleanest way.
So then, let's see, Leanne, help me out with this one. So the motion as stated above, with removal of Edenstone bench, bid alternate one, with reaching.
Sure, you could just. One option would be to say and direct staff to request a change order to remove the bench from bid alternate one.
So moved. Sounds great. Trustee Baldoff?
Trustee
I will
Baldoff?
still second that.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Trustee
All right,
Stokbrand?
I think I'm done.
Okay. Trustee Stokbrand?
I was just going to try to help him with the amended motion.
Okay. Why don't we try taking a vote on this and see where we're at? And if it fails, then we'll go for another one. Can we do a roll call, please?
Trustee Ursink,
Aye.
trustee Moore Baldoff,
Yes.
trustee Stokbrand,
Aye.
trustee Warren,
Aye.
trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
trustee Backhorst,
Yes.
President McKeag.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, yay. Who's gonna call
Yay,
Mike
it worked. That's awesome.
That's awesome. Okay, moving on to 9C, consider award of contract for police department parking lot reconstruction. Another oldie but a goodie. Who is presenting that this evening? Director Bushwick?
That will be me, yep.
Okay.
So you'll note in the memo that we have received 3 bids for the reconstruction of the police department south parking lot. I just want to remind you that we did some remediation work there. The tank that had been identified in the phase 2 report, we actually found to have been abandoned in place. The state inspector that was on site on the day that we were excavating did allow that tank to be removed or to remain in place. So it is still there. So the good news there is that that will provide quite a bit of cost savings to the remediation contract that the board previously approved. The drawback there is because we did not remove that tank, nor the immediately surrounding soils, that does preclude the use of GI on the site. So that GI area, the pervious pavers, was removed from the contract. So this will be a standard asphalt parking lot.
All right, so you need a motion. Right, we're awarding the contract.
Yes,
So
please.
are there any questions or is there a motion? Yes,
You know,
trustee Ursink.
I'm on a roll right now. I guess I can make a motion, and it's unfortunate that there's no GI opportunities, but I think I'm a firm believer in making sure that the projects make sense for green infrastructure. So we don't want to put something where it doesn't make sense. So I will go ahead and I move to approve of unit price contract with Stark Pavement Corporation in the amount of $105,999.00.
Second.
All right, motion by trustee Ursink, seconded by trustee Arndorfer. Any further discussion? If not, trustee Stokbrand.
Yeah, I just want to make sure then it looks like we're going to need, when it comes budget time, looks like about $30,000 of capital reserves already. Would this be from 20? Because it will be done this year, so it's 2021. I mean, the 2022 capital reserves, and that's approved by Director Emmanuelson.
That's not a question I'm comfortable answering. I guess I can certainly speak with him and we can get you that information. Unless Rebecca is able to respond.
Do you need the answer in order to take action? Trustee Stokbrand?
Yeah, I think it's always nice to know where the money's coming from.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Rebecca, if I could, Rebecca, my previous understanding had been that capital reserves aren't necessarily designated by year.
Correct. I was just going to say that.
Okay.
So in 2022, we only have 2022 capital reserves. So they'd be taken from the 2022 capital reserves.
And we're sure there's enough. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, let's do a roll call vote then.
Trustee Moore Baldoff,
Yes.
Trustee Stokbrand,
Aye.
Trustee Warren,
Aye.
Trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
Trustee Backhorst,
Yes.
Trustee Ursink,
Yes.
President McKeag.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Great. Moving on to 9D, consider commercial zoning update communication plan. Director Griefentraub, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, President McKeag. So as the board is familiar with, the village is currently embarking on a commercial zoning update with our consultants from Codametrics and Duncan Associates. We met last Monday on the 20th of February with the working group. The consultant was very impressed with the makeup of the working group, so I was happy to hear that. Within that meeting, we did confirm that the first public workshop would take place on Thursday, March 31st at 6 p.m. For approximately an hour. It would be a virtual meeting. Following that confirmation of the date and time, it was discussed as to how we would promote and market that activity, which prompted me to draft this formal communication plan. Within the conversation of the working group, there was discussion as to whether or not a print postcard would be utilized for this or any other future workshop. It was my impression, or I should say it was my opinion that the print postcards that we've used in the past haven't really drummed up a lot of extra participation. For reference, we did use one for the comprehensive plan. It cost approximately $2,750, took some considerable time and timing to get that out efficiently, and really did not provide a lot of extra people to the meeting. It was pretty much the same people that had been participating throughout the whole time. So it was my recommendation that we continue to push through digital and social media markets to get this message out there, to use our internal contacts, neighbors talking to neighbors, work group members talking to other people in the community. I'm not opposed to a postcard or a different mailer of sorts. I just haven't found them to be very useful or efficient in respect of getting the response that we're hoping for. I did mention that there is an article in the Shorewood today in this March issue regarding the project that will hopefully drive people to the website where it has been posted that the meeting is March 31st. Beyond that, we are doing village managers memo articles. The Shorewood today will be doing a press release, a social media updates, project posters. We'll utilize the Village Center Information Board and the high school EMC as well, and then targeted emails through our own contacts. So what is in the packet here is what I have prepared and I'm comfortable with providing a level of service for. If there is a desire from the board to do more, and in particular a postcard, we would need to identify where that budget is coming from, because this project does not have extra money in there. If we were to do a postcard, it's honestly too late for the March 31st meeting to probably get that efficiently done and sent out in time. But I would be open to perhaps considering something like that for the open house in which the draft is being discussed. The consultant did make it, she did kind of imply that a lot of people don't understand what they're looking at until they see a draft of something. And so as much as I want a lot of people to participate in these public workshops, I think in terms of if we want to spend extra money on promoting something, that would be the primary meeting where I would look for the greatest impact. So that's just my perspective. I'm happy to take direction from the board. As I mentioned, I'm not recommending the postcard at this time. That was the only real piece that I remember being discussed, but Trustee Stokbrand and Trustee Ursink can fill us in on any other perspectives on that. But yeah, what is before you tonight would be a communication plan that I as staff could administer myself without additional budget.
Okay, great. So, so what we're being asked to do is we should have reviewed the materials in our packet. The communication plan is similar to those that we've used on similar projects. There are no additional funds set aside or staff resources for additional communication or mass mailings at this time. So I would say procedurally, I guess what I would suggest is that if there's a will to approve the communications plan as presented, that we could take that motion. If there's an interest in assigning additional resources, that would have to be a separate motion, and I'd be a little, or Rebecca, could you give, is that something that the village manager could, since it's under $5,000, can we just give direction, or would we have to make a motion with an amount of money? I just want to give the board clear direction on how to handle this procedurally if there is a will to add additional resources to this communication plan.
Mm-hmm. I think it'd be preferred that it be a part of a motion.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So I guess I would, Trustee Ursink or Trustee Stokbrand, do you want to add anything? Trustee Stokbrand?
Yes, thank you. I guess I'm wondering, in looking at this, what was I guess we've already sent out a press release, right? That was part of the original contract with the consultant, was that they would send out a press release?
We'll be using that press release for the first public workshop, so that has not been done yet. But yes, that was included in the proposal from them. So I've asked them to draft that for the March 31st, and we'll be sending it to the Journal, the North Shore Now, the standard press release that the village puts out.
Okay. I just have to be honest with you. If you think a postcard is not effective, I have to be, what do you think you're going to get from North Shore Now if you send them a press release? You have one media outlet that does not provide consistent, comprehensive coverage. I question the effectiveness of that. I also wonder, I don't think posters, when we originally talked about communication with Codometrics, I don't recall seeing anything about posters. I remember seeing the press release. Is the posters a new addition to the communication plan?
So the posters are something that I've done standard with the transportation plan, the housing plan, and the comp plan. And so yeah, I have done those and placed those in coffee shops around the village. I don't know, once again, what outreach they're getting, but I'm happy to put those together myself again as well. And then I should clarify, one of the members of the working group, Libra Laced, it does work in marketing and communication. She's offered to help me, draft snappier language, more layperson kind of things to attract, an average resident to it. Perhaps my zoning, stuff is pretty wonky sometimes. And so, yeah, she'd be happy to work with me on those as well. But yeah, that's something that we've standardly done with other planning projects. I would draft them and put them up at various business throughout the community that have those boards.
Okay, I guess my thinking is to get, what do you get? Maybe 20 posters printed. If you did a mass mailing of postcards, it'd be about 6,000. If you do one per household, it's the same mailing list as Shorewood Today. It's unfortunate Shorewood Today was already printed, because that was in our working group meeting, as Trustee Ursink probably remembers. That was our first choice, was, Shorewood Today is not printed. Let's put the time and date of the first meeting in. But anyway, it was had already gone to press. I guess the questions I have, if you're going to take the time and the effort and go to the cost to print maybe 24 posters and literally hand deliver them around town, it really seems more effective to me to do a mass mailing. The printer and the post office does most of the work with that. Once you take them the image, I think it's a lot easier than doing a few posters and taking them manually to spots around town. I have a concern that we're taking the time with the planning department to individually contact developers, real estate salespeople, attorneys to come and attend. There's listening sessions. We've got staff time for that, but we don't have staff time to do a mailing that will reach every household on an issue that's extremely important. We'll be living with this code for probably decades. I'm also concerned that we can find residents with a mailing when it's time for a utility bill or a property tax bill. But when it's something as important as this code where we're not seeking money, we don't have the staff to do a mailing. I think it's just important that we over communicate on this because of things that have happened in the village before. So I understand this will be difficult, but I think this is something that we need to do for the residents. I have neighbors who don't use social media. And, you know, the village manager's memo is great. Do we hit 2,000 to 3,000? I don't know how many people we hit. I don't see a reason to not over communicate on this. We can find money in the budget for, you know, a lot of different things. I think community outreach here is so critical for integrity and trust in the process.
Thank you. I just want to say I didn't hear anybody say that there isn't money. It's just saying that we didn't put a budget to this, and so it needs to be considered tonight, and that's why we're here tonight. So thank you for sharing those thoughts. Trustee Baldoff, then Trustee Ursink, I think, and then Trustee Arndorfer, or no?
No, sorry, I was next. Ursink was next. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to be the counterpoint to Trustee Stokebrand's pitch for mailers. I do think mailers are extremely wasteful. They're very expensive, and I think it's essentially throwing about $5,000 right into the garbage can. That's where the majority of these postcards go when people get them. They don't look at them; they throw them away with junk mail. I think we have a lot more effective means to reach the engaged people that we want to target. I think there's a certain resident here in Shorewood that is into this sort of thing and engaged by this sort of thing that will find the space. We have email lists with the Senior Resource Center, with all the different community groups. We have email lists that we can email out. Social media is extremely valuable, and while your neighbors might not have it or utilize it, they know people that do, and those people can knock on doors, and Trustee Stokebrand, you can talk to your neighbors, you know. So I would say that, you know, if we want to be good stewards of tax dollars, printing postcards for zoning code is not a very smart use of that money at this current stage. You know, that, like Bart was saying, I think in the future there might be better opportunities, but let's be responsible with taxpayer money and not, you know, just throw this money right into garbage cans. Let's use let's use all the different means that we have right now. And I do believe that the digital will reach the people that we need to reach.
Trustee Baldoff?
I was just going to say, I agree with Trustee Stokebrand on this. I think if we're going to take the time and spend the money to do this, we should do it in a way that is reaching as many people as possible. And, you know, I agree with Arthur. I definitely think most, or many at least, of our residents are using social media and finding ways to get information, but, you know, we're not going to get media coverage out of this in a way that is educating people. And because this is something that is going to have such a long-term impact, I think that we really need to take every step to get the information to people. I mean, I am open to the idea of doing it in other ways rather than a separate mailer. I don't know if it's something that we ever do. You know, when we mail out water bills, like, do we ever put information on the bottom of those? It sounds like, you know, from this plan, it looks like there's going to be a project website. Can we do something where at the bottom of the, you know, water bill, it's, you know, this public comment period is coming up. We're doing this plan. Visit this website for more information, you know, which should be a no cost option to the village other than the staff time to make sure that language is added to a mailing that's already happening. So, you know, I'd be open to other ways of doing it, but my thought is if we're going to put the time and the effort into having a communication strategy, we should make sure that it is reaching everybody.
Trustee Arndorfer?
Yeah, I would concur with Trustees Stokebrand and Baldoff. I do echo what Trustee Stokebrand said. I do think, and this is a big deal, I do think it's important that we over communicate on this. And to Director Creepentrog's point, I mean, there are resources within the working group, maybe beyond a working group, that we can, tap to maybe come up with different approaches on how we can make these, potentially make these more effective, and maybe learn something and, build upon what we already do. So it's not a great deal of money. And that, to, previously raised points, it's going to impact our community for decades. I think it makes sense to, do everything we can to reach the maximum amount of people. Thank you.
Trustee Bachhorst?
Thank
Oh,
you.
Trustee Warren, were you next?
Oh, sorry.
No.
Trustee
Bachhorst.
She's next.
Thank you. So this has been an ongoing discussion since I've been on the board for 9 years now, and prior to joining the board is media campaigns and how do we get the most bang for our buck. And I have a couple of questions regarding this. So mailers. So I know that we sent out mailers for the comprehensive plan, right? Postcards out to, well, anyway, that's just one example of when you, even if you mail village-wide to all 6,500 unique addresses, you still might only get 24 people to show up to what was a very big meeting for public input. I understand that, and I agree that we want to hit people hard with a lot of information that will impact our residents for decades and decades. But mailing postcards, I agree with Trustee Ursink on this. Unless there is a much more robust and sexy, I'll say, campaign, you can hit people with as much information doesn't mean that they're going to want to show up to the meetings. If we are going to spend very limited resources on media campaigns, then we should engage our marketing committee, which has been in effect for quite some time, and find out better ways to engage our audience instead of going piecemeal by project, determining which project is more important to mail out to all 6,500 residents and spend that kind of money. Speaking of, we just removed a bench from a public launching a canoe launch for $2,500 to save money. So we have to look at these things holistically. That was a public amenity that would benefit many, many people. Not saying that this wouldn't, but I don't want us to waste more money in mailings if we're going to do this piecemeal, forgive the pun. So I would say I'm fine with what Bart had outlined. This is what they do on the regular, and I get it. It's very information and transparency, and it is important. And these are great buzzwords and things that I believe that we all believe in. But a piecemeal marketing strategy based on this one thing, I don't find it that effective. I think we need to have a more comprehensive, holistic marketing campaign and strategy that this board buys into, because we do spend money. We are subjective at times as far as where we spend the money. So yes, by all means. Oh, and one last point I want to make to that. We should always be directing people to the village manager's memo and to the Shorewood Today. And if we can't find a way to funnel people into, one source, it used to be back in the day before all of this online stuff, there was, the newspaper, but also the bulletin boards outside of the library, et cetera. So anyway, this is important, of course, but just about everything we do in this village is important. So I would go with the initial recommendation by staff. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Warren.
Yeah, I think we've we've discussed this one a lot, so I'll try to be very brief. I mean, at the end of the day, I do see some of the. I think that sending out a village-wide mailing, I think that it's probably unlikely to get a lot more people to the meeting in and of itself. That said, I think the downside risk is that you have someone come back in 2 years, or you have a group of people who say, I don't use social media, and I wasn't aware of this, and I felt shut out of the process. So at the end of the day, I think my inclination would be to just send. It's such an important piece of information. My inclination would be to send the mailing. But I do think I want to pull out something that Trustee Bachhorst mentioned, because I think it might be, in my view, possibly the most important piece of this discussion. I think she's completely and 100% right that we need a kind of a comprehensive look at when we do mailings. You know, whether that's tackled by some marketing, our marketing committee, or strategic initiatives or something like that. Because, you know, part of the issue is that having these conversations, we're using our judgment to prioritize certain things and kind of pick out, well, this is important here, maybe this is important, well, this is not as important. And it's really just, it would probably be better if we had that discussion when it wasn't an urgent pressing matter. And we said, you know, for these types of things, we send a mailing, for these types of things, we don't. And really kind of had that discussion as a standalone discussion, as opposed to every time it comes up. So I think that that's beyond this one-off discussion. I think that's a really important piece.
Trustee Baldauf or Trustee Ursing, did you have something to add, or did you want to make a motion? Who was first?
Yeah, I guess I want to follow up on Trustee Warren. I think that's just an incredible point. And I think I feel like a mailer in this situation could be really valuable. But based on our working group and the conversation, the language and the marketing we have behind it, it would just be kind of hastily done. There would be, we don't really have an attractive campaign for this yet. And the topic is fairly bland. So I think there needs to be some effort put into making this really interesting and exciting for everybody in the community, and to make it understandable for everybody. And I'm just not quite sure that we have, the time for that right now, because the meeting, is coming up fairly quickly here. So I'm just not certain that we have the time to put something attractive together. And I think that's where the waste comes in, is that we're just going to hastily throw something together and throw it in the mail. So I do agree that we should reach every resident in Shorewood, and that's not the question here. I just feel like we're just going to be rushing to do this to say we did it, and it's not going to be as effective as we want it to be.
Trustee Stokebrand and then Trustee Arndorfer. And then be aware that we're going around twice now.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify. I've heard Arthur said 5,000. I think Bart said 2,300. The actual cost of the postcard mailing is not 5,000. Is that correct?
The finance director informed that the comprehensive plan postcard was $2,750 approximately. So just under $3,000.
Printing and postage.
Correct.
Okay, so it's way less than 5,000, almost half. I don't think we need to overthink this. It's not rocket science. We need a fast, quick, concise, interesting message on a postcard. We don't need to come up with a huge marketing strategy for this, in the next 10 days. It's just a postcard, but it will serve the purpose of, hitting the people making sure we hit everybody, the ones who are not into social media. And I do think it's a valid point. Who's on the Community and Business Relations Committee with me? And we also have a marketing committee, I believe, that's, we clearly are not using these as well as we could to help us communicate. And I think the other thing we all have to be aware of and acknowledge is that, one of Tyler's things this year was going to be to put up the message boards. And I believe he was going to do some sort of a quarterly newsletter or something that was going to alternate months with Shorewood Today. And so part of this is just a temporary situation. Thank you.
Trustee Arndorfer?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to something Director Griepentrog said. I just want to make sure I heard him correctly. Hitting the date for getting a postcard out in time to adequately support the 331 forum seems difficult at best, but when we have we have a better chance of doing something for when the draft comes out, for the draft meeting, so that we can actually, take some time to think about how we want to do this the right way. Is that accurate?
I mean, I can confirm with who we've used in the past as to how quickly they can turn this around, but yeah, if we're looking at the 31st, you want to get that in people's mailboxes at least a week prior to that. So you're looking at the 24th. So printing and sending it out the week of the 14th. If we are able to get something together this week, I could bounce it off the working group to get it out there. But I just want to clarify, we're not talking about a postcard for every single workshop then, correct? So what essentially we're doing is we're inviting someone to the first workshop. Part of my hesitation with that is it's going to be very introductory, very kind of zoning code wonky kind of stuff, as opposed to the fourth workshop, which is where the draft of the code will be presented. That will actually, in my opinion, have more meat to the conversation. I'm just saying, in my opinion, if I were looking to get the most people at a particular meeting, it'd be that fourth meeting. You can disagree with that perspective. That's fine. I'm just telling you in terms of how I've seen these postcards work in the past, is you're going to get 5 to 10 extra people to show up to it. I want them to be able to show up and provide, their greatest impact. So I leave that to the board. If you direct me to provide one for the first, the workshop, we can get working on it right away. But I just also want to clarify that it's that one, or it's how many, I guess. So I'm here if there's budget and if there's time available to do as directed. So just please let me know. I provided my perspective, and you're more than happy or more than willing to to vote on what you prefer.
All right, what you said makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you.
Okay. Show of hands, is it the expectation of the board that we would do a mailing, a community-wide mailing for every workshop within this project? No? So it would just be this one?
I think we got to pick one.
Okay, trustee Sofran, we're going around 3 times, just so you know.
Well, I just want to make sure if someone shows up, so when would that mailing be? It'd be in August. And if they come and say, well, but I'd like to put this into, I think we have seen this sometimes with consultants. They'll say, oh, you should have asked that question 2 meetings ago, 3 meetings ago. I mean, how much substantial change if you only allow a postcard? What can people change? Is that the meeting that we'd want the postcard for? Is that what you're proposing then, Bart, or suggesting? The 4th, which one do you want? Is that the August? And then we'd approve it in October? So how much meaningful change?
That is the only meeting where a draft code will be presented.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I would just say we'd have
I'm happy with whatever direction provided.
be willing to make some changes if someone says, well, this is the first one I've heard of, right?
Right. I think at this time, I'd like to ask for a motion from the floor. Is there a motion? Trustee, I saw 2 hands. Trustee Backhorst, your hand was up. Did you want to make a motion, or did you have something to add?
No, I was going to go my second time, but I'll wait till there's a motion made and then I will make a comment.
Okay, if you want to talk now, you can.
I will just say, I will just make a plea again for 2,750, more than the cost of a bench, that we wait and have a firm strategy instead of right now we're picking which of the 4 meetings we want to send a postcard to. Let's send this back to committee. Let's send this to community and business relations and ask the marketing committee to weigh in. And this will help kickstart a more robust communication strategy in general. But I understand that zoning change is especially for a lot of the newer board members, kind of a tricky thing, but it's pretty rudimentary in government. This is not, so this might be a big deal for many of us here, but it's also an ongoing process and something that cleaning up the zoning code is something that we have had the benefit of having Bart here to help us with, and it's going to be ongoing. So I get it. There's always going to be a time where someone says, this is the first time I'm hearing this. This always happens. People have different levels of engagement at different times in their life. And I know some people on this board have very strong opinions regarding zoning codes and recent construction or proposals, but I don't want us to waste money because of that to capture an extra 5 people. I think that we have to sharpen our pencils and be very conscientious about how we're spending taxpayer money. So I'm going to say that I'm going to vote no against spending this money on a mailer for this, or just picking arbitrarily one of the 4 meetings this evening. But if the rest of the board wants to use 2,750 of taxpayer money for this, that's fine too. That's your prerogative. But I've been on this board for a long time. And I'm going to say that we cut so much from the budget for us to kind of pick this out of the hat because we're dissatisfied with a variety of things. I think we all are dissatisfied with the lack of media attention, but this isn't going to replace a newspaper, and we really need to be judicious. So thank you.
Trustee Sokran, you had your hand up. Did you, before Arthur did?
I was going to make a motion. Do you want to entertain one, or would you like Trustee Ursink to go first?
I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the commercial zoning update communication plan with the addition of one village-wide mailing for the meeting, the second community meeting.
Is there a second?
I would be willing to second that if there was openness to a friendly amendment to just include a mailing. I don't want to make a decision that is too rushed, but I do think that it's important that we have a mailing about the process, and I would support Trustee Bockhorst's suggestion to have this go back to committee to figure out what the best way is to
The
communicate this
cleanest way
via.
would be to let it fail and then make a new motion.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Okay, motion fails for lack of second. Trustee Ursink?
I hate to go into any sort of details or specifics. I'm just kind of thinking right now, is there a way we can just make this a very more generalized postcard that can encompass all the different sort of meetings, and all the different opportunities, instead of focusing on one particular opportunity? Can we just say, visit the village website at this web address, and there we can have all of the information for all of the meetings, and people can kind of pick and choose what they want to go for, instead of being, and I don't want to keep on saying that this is a waste of money, but I want to use this money, and you want to use this opportunity effectively. So can we talk about all the different possibilities instead of just one possibility? But I'd be in favor of a mailing eventually, but it's good.
If you make a motion, why don't you try making a motion for a general mailing to be added to the communications plan, and then see if there's a second.
Okay, I will move to approve the commercial zoning update communication plan with one mailing approved by the business and community relations and the work group.
Keep in mind the timeline. What?
At the, so Bart, is this something that the work group can actually, are we slated to discuss this? Could we discuss this at our next meeting?
So the working group wasn't proposed to meet until after the first workshop. If you
Okay.
wanted me to provide a draft of a general one that possibly we could get out before the first one, I'd be happy to send that around electronically to the working group and get their comments on it. I think that is something that's doable, but once again, it will only have generalized guidance to go to the website where the dates will then be published. But
yeah,
if it's acceptable to get the draft out to the work group and have them provide me comments by a certain date prior to publication, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that sounds like a great idea. So I mean, can we go with, okay, how do we create a motion around that?
How about direct Bart to use his discretion, and let's trust our expert.
Okay, so I move to approve the commercial zoning update communication plan with I'm struggling here. Sorry.
Addition of
one community-wide mailing postcard.
And direct staff to work with key stakeholders to determine when in the content of sorry. Too complicated.
All right.
Do you want me to take a stab at it, Arthur? Because I feel like you've been doing a lot of the lifting here.
I was trying to do the whole meeting. I was trying to make like the every motion this meeting.
I mean, if you want to hold on to it, you certainly can.
All right,
No, you guys are
trustee
starting to
Baldoff,
lose it.
please.
Okay,
Trustee Baldoff, please.
I'm gonna take a stab at it and say, I
Okay.
move to approve the commercial zoning update communication plan with the addition of a community-wide mailing and direct staff to make the appropriate decisions to facilitate said mailing. Is that like
Okay.
permissible? I don't
That's
want to
great.
try to be overly prescriptive here because I do trust Bart and the
Mhm.
team to get it done. And I want to be like, oh, it has to have this and this and this. Like, you guys know how to do a mailing.
Right.
So generalized mailing, do we need the approval of any of the subcommittees?
No,
Or are we just gonna
no,
direct,
no.
okay, so we're just gonna direct
I don't
staff.
think we do. I don't want to overthink
Okay.
it. I think it's important that a mailing happen, and I understand and appreciate that Bart and staff were trying to, be aware of costs, and I understand everybody's concern. I just think it's important that we get the mailing out, so.
Well, I will second that. Does staff feel like they have the right direction on that as far as that motion?
Yes.
They've
At least
gotten all
I
the
do.
feedback. So is there a second?
Second,
Well, oh, so you're with so trustee Baldorf was the.
was I,
Baldoff
was that, can
I'm
I
gonna
make
rephrase
that
it. No, I'm
motion?
just kidding.
I'll make that motion.
I think it was.
Motion by trustee
I
Ursink,
had-
seconded by trustee Baldorf.
Yeah, I had
Okay.
a motion by trustee Moore Baldoff, a second by trustee Ursink.
Let's go with that.
Excellent.
Got to give her points for getting that one out.
I tried.
Great. Is there further discussion that, no repeats, is there anything else to be added? All right, I will say that I am pro mailings, I'm pro stop signs, I'm pro a lot of things. I do think that it is important that we be consistent about when we use them so that it doesn't come up like this. I think that there are sort of underlying concerns around participation and concerns around the outcome of the zoning update project that have been kind of bubbling up, and we just need to really kind of hash them out and really work collaboratively and talk directly about what our concerns are, and not have it. Sometimes these things can get wrapped up as like, oh, we don't have enough input, when it's really like we're worried about some outcome and we just need to talk about what it is. That's not going to happen tonight, but I will support this motion. So let's take a roll call on this, please.
Okay.
No
Trustee Stokebrand.
discussion?
Oh.
You calling the question, President?
Well, is there any further discussion? I already waited and. Oh, trustee Backhorst?
Well, I'll make it up at items for future consideration, but I will vote yes to this with just hoping that my fellow trustees here will support that we will look at a more robust communication strategy. As I won't beat a dead horse here. So that's it. Thank you.
This is why I brought up the motion, the future item a few weeks around is around expectations, around communications, transparency, that kind of, the expectations around communications is very important that we put the budget and the staff capacity with it. So I do think that this is coming up enough that we need to talk about it in a more comprehensive way. So I appreciate that.
Oh, sorry.
Final comment?
Yeah,
Trustee
it's
Backhorst?
actually yes, I was wondering if we could get, and it doesn't have to be tonight, but we could get an idea from Mark as far as what our communication budget, if we are exceeding that.
We're out of scope, but future item. All right, let's do a roll call vote on this, please.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Arndorfer.
Aye.
Trustee Backhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Ursink.
Yes.
Trustee Moore Baldoff.
Yes.
President McKeag.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, thank you, everyone. Item 10, update on implementation of audiovisual equipment and timeline for in-person meetings and revoking emergency order. Manager Ewald.
All right. Included in your packet, I listed out a memo, which was a recap of where we've been. Wow, it's been a long journey with COVID. So I appreciate you guys staying with this and moving through all the different modifications and things that we've done with teleconference. We have a good system that was installed. When I went to go use the system in the courtroom, it was identified that it wasn't spec'd with an HDMI location where I would need it, primarily my desktop or the clerks. So I think there was all the best intention. They were thinking of the public, but I need to be able to connect into there to make sure that we have a connection so I can run the cameras from where I'm seated. And have that there. So we put out a request to the vendor to get that installed. I reconnected with them today and a second reminder to see if they could provide me with a schedule of when that could be accomplished. I'm no IT expert, but I would hope that that could get done in the next 30 days. I also informed you about some pre-plans that I included within my schedule prior to knowledge of transition of some staff members. And so want to meet expectations for, also providing a solid meeting on the 21st, and had suggested potentially the board consider going back in person on April 4th.
All right, so any questions or a motion? Oh, wait, this is an update, so. No, we do want a motion.
Right.
Okay,
We'd like to get some direction
who was
because.
first?
Oh.
I'm sorry, who was first?
Trustee
All right, we'll just
Stokebrand,
go
and
across the
trustee
screen.
Ursink and trustee
Okay,
Warren.
trustee Stokebrand, and then, okay.
Thank
Kathy?
you. I had a question about in the page about the policy. So it's village board meetings, plan commission and police commission and CDA. So we want them to all meet in the courtroom. Now I know the police commission met last week in the committee room. I just wonder about the seating in the courtroom for the CDA, the plan commission and the CDA. Wouldn't we want them to meet in the committee room? I know before, I think that was their venue before this all happened. And I know the police commission met last week in the committee room. So I was curious about that. They should, the language that says, I'm on page 226 of the packet. Don't we want, the committee room is available, right?
Yes, and can you just reference me to the page in the policy that you're looking at?
It doesn't have a page, it's at the top of page 2. Or I'm sorry, halfway down, the middle of page 2, right underneath video recording meetings, and in that first paragraph, it says they shall all be held in the village, courtroom.
Sure, they can be held in the courtroom. We also have the availability of the committee room. When I reference specifically the HDMI cord with respect to village board, it's just that you typically are in that courtroom. So I'm going to have, we need the other HDMI cable in the courtroom. But you are correct in that these groups do not necessarily need to meet in the village boardroom. And yes, we met with the police commission in the committee room, and I believe that's their intention to do so moving forward.
Okay, so I guess for those 3 groups, it's everybody except the village board. We should make it clear that their spot is where it used to be. It's in the committee room, and that's going to be all ready to go at the beginning of April too, correct?
Yes, and in here, when this was drafted, it was the thought that potentially only the courtroom would have this type of technology or availability at the time. So it said, when possible in the courtroom, but if held elsewhere, that we'll do the best to record the meeting. We do have that recording available in the committee room.
Yeah, and this policy was adopted already by the board. So what's before us tonight is implementing it starting on the 4th. Trustee Ursing, Trustee Warren?
Manager Ewald, would there be any, is there anything that the trustees should know before coming in? I know that we can use our own laptops. It's going to kind of mimic this sort of situation, but in the village, in Village Hall, is there a way we can come in and maybe do a test run or, do something before that first meeting just to ensure that everything's kind of working properly? So you can kind of get a scope of several different people being in a room with laptops all at the same time? Or do you feel confident enough that we can just set up and go? I guess in my experience with AV stuff, it's always good to have a test run of some sorts beforehand. So what would be your best suggestion there?
So, I like your suggestion. I think that I could actually do that with Village Hall staff members before you guys get there. Because if you just said, so there's two ways that you can engage in this. You as a board member can elect to bring your own laptop and be on camera, and then you're going to get a box just like you do here, and you're just going to connect to Zoom like you normally would. And then in addition to that, we would have a wide pan camera of the room. So you can choose to actually be there with your own box, or you can choose to just have your voice and any video recording of your movements on the larger screen that's panning the room. So if you do use your device, it's just, we ask that you mute yourself so that the microphones and equipment don't pick up your voices through your computer, and then just cause a feedback issue with that on the screen. But I think that's, I really appreciate you, Arthur, thinking about that. I'd be happy to trial it first with other staff members. I've been using it. Sometimes I feel like people are like, where are you in Village Hall? I keep popping up in different rooms. And to see, but otherwise it should be as simple as you guys just connecting to Zoom.
Yeah, and then if people had a variety of different computers, Macintosh, whatever. But I think the other issue might be as well with the microphone. So with our own personal microphones on speaker view, it'll automatically flip to the box, my box, your box. I typically watch everything in gallery view. So anybody watching at home, if they're watching speaker view, it will never change to the box because my computer will mute it. So it'll always be on that audio source, which would be that wide shot, right? So, so if somebody really wanted to engage with the trustees and see, all the trustees in the boxes, they would have to click on the gallery view to see everybody. And if it was on speaker view, they would never see any of those boxes. Typically, maybe they'd be on top or they'd be on a sidebar, but it would just be the wide shot.
Correct.
So then if video would the recordings just be the wide shot, or would the recordings be the gallery, the speaker? I'm sorry, this is a little too much, but we can talk about this offline. It's not necessary to talk about it right now.
Well, I can answer your question. So we, potentially, think about me in the square that I'm in right now. That would be a gallery shot, and you as individual trustees could continue to have your own box where you are right now. That's how it would appear.
And would it be recorded in gallery or speaker?
It would be recorded through the gallery.
Okay.
Yep, because all of you would be muted on your personal devices. And the speaker, the sound, maybe you guys don't care right now, but the speaker sound really picks up so well. I've been kind of pleased with how that's been. But also I'd be happy to trial it too with the recording as well, just to see what that sounds like. Maybe I could put together a recording for you guys. I could do that. Maybe that could be a little bit of part of our training.
I love the troubleshooting, and I think, and between all 7 of us, we each have some contributions. So I think we have a couple of weeks, if this motion passes tonight, we have a couple of weeks to do some kind of technical troubleshooting and get out some direction, or some type of technical do's and don'ts, or frequently asked questions, or whatever. People can submit their questions to Rebecca. but yeah, it's getting kind of late to do a lot of technical stuff. And I guess I'd like to, what we really need to decide is, are we going back in person on April 4th? And are we going to place a resolution removing the emergency declaration on March 21st? So that's the business at hand. So, oh, Trustee Warren.
Yeah, I was just gonna make I'll make a quick comment and then I'm gonna make a motion. My quick comment is this: I've always been, maybe everyone's ahead of me, but I'm always a little skeptical of real true hybrid meetings. But I had occasion this week to attend the same meeting through quirky scheduling and running from place to place. I attended one half of it remote and one half of it in the room. And I realized that the functionality might work a little differently for us, but it worked really well. It was a much better experience than I expected it to be on both ends. So I think that this will work well, and I look forward to going back. And in that vein, I'd like to make a motion, if I can get the right screen up here. I move to proceed with in-person meetings for all board, commissions, committees on April 4th, 2022, and request staff to place a resolution removing the emergency declaration on the March 21st, 2022 village board agenda.
Second.
I'll second it.
Is there a second? Okay, motion by Trustee Warren, seconded by Trustee Bachhorst. I'll recap that technical questions and troubleshooting questions, definitely put those in writing to Rebecca so that we all get the benefit of those responses. I think what I also heard was, if there is the capability of practicing, that there might be interest in this group to participate in that, so we don't have opening night nerves. Are there other questions at this time from the trustees regarding this motion on the table? Let's see, don't see any other hands. Will we be wearing masks?
Trustee Stokebrand.
Oh, I'm sorry, Trustee Stokebrand, I didn't see you.
I was just going to say, we cannot all be there at the same time. So, to do a dry run, so to speak. So in the interest of staff time, some of us may have to make the leap and just jump in. And maybe it'll be Arthur and I, because we have never, well, neither of Arthur, Jim, and Melissa been in the courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I saw your seats last time.
Yeah, I promise we won't violate any open meeting laws in getting ready for this transition. So will there be a mask policy, or are we following CDC guidelines? So true confessions, I have COVID right now, so I am aware that, or is it going to be personal choice?
Our policy right now says that we're, with regards in what we had switched to before, once the mask or face covering ordinance was removed, was that we were going to follow CDC guidelines. So that's what we are doing, which does not require anyone to wear a mask in our facility, but it's definitely a personal choice for people.
Okay, so we can mask. Okay, and then also I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that, well, we can talk about it when we, never mind, about the emergency resolution and what that means. We can talk about it next time when it's on the agenda. All right, if there's no further discussion, why don't we take a roll call vote on this matter?
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Arndorfer.
Aye.
Trustee Bachhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Ursink.
Yes.
Trustee Moore Baldoff.
Yes.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
President McCaig.
Aye.
Look forward to seeing you all on the 4th.
Yay, super exciting, right?
Yeah.
Trustee Stokebrand, 2 years in the making. I cannot wait.
Awesome. All right, moving on to item 11, report to village officials. 11A, village president. The ICC meeting, as Rebecca mentioned in the village manager update, we were successful in passing the creation of Racial Equity and Inclusion Committee. The ICC had created an ad hoc working group in 2020, which generated a several-page report that the ICC adopted, but then no further action was taken at that time. So I was really pleased. I made a motion. There was some discussion. We had a couple of amendments to the motion, but it ended up passing unanimously. And we also created a Parks Committee at that time, as there is a lot of concern around the lack of a dedicated funding stream for deferred maintenance at the park system. And finally, so then I attended a fines and fees justice 2-day training called Boot Camp in Phoenix. Well, actually, I attended virtually because I caught COVID, so I didn't go in person to Phoenix, Arizona last week. I attended for my professional work, but there is a Milwaukee County team that attended with the intention of looking at fines and fees reform at the county level. It was an incredible amount of information. I look forward to sharing it with you as it's appropriate, as this type of financial justice does play a role in dismantling barriers for diverse and inclusive communities, and is steeped in municipal law as well as county law and practice. And then just a quick update on the BI board. We were going to try to host a joint community meeting around our long-range financial plans and processes. The school board is involved in developing their budget assumptions, which involves a lot of stakeholder meetings. So it looks like we may kind of pivot and do kind of a self-training instead of doing a community meeting this year, just due to staff and time and calendar constraints. But more to come on that. I believe that's all I have. Village trustees, any reports? Trustee Ursink.
Yeah, I just want to, we just received the Shorewood Today magazine, and I just want to say how proud I am of that team and the magazine in general. It is just such a fantastic resource for our community, and it should be put on a pedestal in the whole North Shore, if not Milwaukee, for local community magazines and papers. I think this is one of those things that I'm just super glad we support and we fund and we work with. And I'm just so proud of the team over there. So if there's anybody on this board that can relay that message, that would be fantastic. So I think they do just a fantastic job, and very appreciative of that group and the magazine.
Thank you. Trustee Sofran.
Thank you. On behalf of the Shorewood Women's Club, I want to thank Library Director Rachel Collins for helping the club arrange a space for the candidates forum last Sunday in the Village Center, and Assistant Library Director Emily Vieira for her assistance during the event. Also, thank you to club members Jenny Cooney-Volpes and especially Vashi Logier for organizing the event with the League of Women Voters. It was great to be in the space for the few people that were able to be the audience.
Thank you. Trustee Bachhorst.
Thank you. I am just going to bring it up now. I guess we don't vote on it, but there's no items for future consideration on tonight's agenda. So I don't know how I guess the village president and village manager, or we could wait until next time, but we talked about a communications plan and marketing, et cetera. So I guess my report is that we don't have the opportunity.
Yeah, and you know what, I
make
have to
that
apologize for that,
recommendation.
because I think when I inserted the closed session language, it took up that tab and then it bumped it out. So I noticed it right as I was prepping for the meeting. I thought, where is this? As I'm trying to find it. So something was off in the numbering, because our last item switched to a number 10 versus like 9E. So my apologies for that, and I have noted it.
Sure. Okay. I'm not trying to be a complete schnickel fritz here, but also I did want to, as another report, say how proud I am of us. I think this is my first time in many, many years where we've gone through the complete consent agenda without pulling any item. So And we had, I can't count this high, about 20 items on there. So anyway, thank you.
Any other reports of village officials? Trustee Stokebrand.
I just had one question about Trustee Bachhorst's comment about communication. If the communication responsibility stays with the assistant village manager, I would suggest we wait until that hire is in place before we start to look at that.
Well, mine was around the
Noted.
marketing communications team, but we're not agenda sized for discussion.
Yeah, duly noted on both accounts. Okay, village manager's report, please.
Muted, sorry about that.
You're muted.
Wanted to update you that coming up on Monday, March 14th, we're going to have a special Public Works Committee meeting. You all, of course, are invited to attend. I think I've already included all of you on that Zoom notice. But the Public Works Committee is going to be hosting the engineer for the project, Clark Dietz, as they walk through some of the design recommendations for the pavement replacement project of North Oakland Avenue. So that meeting is scheduled to begin at 6 o'clock. And I didn't mean to get ahead of it with you, Arthur. So I didn't want to steal your thunder about announcing, reminding people of the meeting. So everybody's welcome to attend, and we've had different pieces of media out there on that. So you're all welcome. Then when we've already talked about it tonight, so I won't hit it any further, but we have a public meeting on the form-based and hybrid code that's coming up. The first meeting that they're going to have is being held on March 31st. So we'll get that on the calendar as well, and we welcome you to join us. And with that, that concludes my report.
Okay. And Rebecca, can you explain to the group around the process of waiting to hear of a selection for a police chief candidate?
Mm-hmm.
Or did
so
you
the police commission met, and they did not make a recommendation or appointment at that time. They are conducting and moving through the process of background checks. And there's also a form waiver that the state now requires, which holds a 30-day time period for that background check and review to be completed. So I anticipate that the commission will convene in the latter half of March, and that they will move forward with an appointment at that time. So I am at the ready and on standby to take their cue to schedule in a meeting, because I know that they're really looking forward to working and concluding the process.
Thank you. All right, we are now asked to consider moving into closed session. Is there a motion to move into closed session?
And just a friendly reminder, if whoever moves into closed session, if you could please read the motion as quoted.
So
Trustee Bachhorst?
I consider moving into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.851E to conduct public business where competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, in particular to discuss discuss and possibly approve the police chief contract.
Yes, is there
I'll
a second?
second if it needs a second.
Okay, motion by Trustee Bachhorst, second by Trustee Baldoff, and then this is a roll call vote.
Trustee Arndorfer.
Aye.
Trustee Ursink.
Aye.
Trustee Bachhorst.
Yes.
Trustee Moore-Baldoff.
Yes.
Trustee Stokebrand.
Aye.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
President McKeag.
Yes.
Motion carries at 9:40. And let's see here. I'm going to